Hey folks, today we're talking about We've Always Lived in the Castle, the end of chapter 3 into the entirety of chapter 4. Let's jump in by talking about the end of 3.4 before we pick up at 3.5. Let me adjust my camera a little bit here. There we go. How's that? The end of 3.4, we get a little bit of backstory on the house itself. Okay, the Hugh Crane, who seems to have been this like sort of twisted, demented dude who had the house built all weirdly. Well, he dies and he wills it to his daughters, the older one and the younger one. Not his daughters, his daughter, his older daughter. Okay, and younger daughter's a little salty about that. Older daughter has this friend she meets from town. I believe the friend comes to live with her. Ultimately, she dies and wills the house to this friend. That really, really upsets the younger daughter, who comes and steals things from their friend who's now living in the house. And eventually there's this legal battle, but the friend wins because the older daughter really did will the house to this friend. But ultimately, what happens? Bum, bum, bum. This friend kills herself, hangs herself. And this is where Eleanor starts to get weird. It's Dr. Montague telling this story. And how does Eleanor react when she hears this woman killed herself? Eleanor, shocked into speech, she half rises and she says, she had to kill herself? She had to kill herself? Like, what a weird, what? What do you mean had to kill herself? Eleanor doesn't really explain herself. It's just a strange thing to say. And Dr. Montague says, you mean, was there any other way for her to escape? Well, she didn't seem to think so, and just kind of moves on. So that's a weird, she had to kill herself? Like, what do you mean had to kill herself? So that, hopefully you found that as weird as I did. Okay, really what this signals is that Eleanor is sort of beginning to the slow process of becoming unhinged. Okay, so with that sort of background, and ultimately, of course, this friend that gets the house who kills herself when she dies, then she wills it to her cousins. The cousins are the Sandersons. Luke Sanderson is, the son of those Sandersons. And here we are. Okay, so let's pick up at 3.5. What's the backstory? The backstory is the house has like this evil backstory, as they all do. And Eleanor is like starting to get weird. 3.5. We get at the bottom of page 299. We get this statement from Eleanor. She says simply, "I have red shoes." Like, she's always giving these weird sort of, here's who I am, these sort of like expressions of selfhood. Okay, I'm here, you're there. We are a group of 4. I'm part of the group. She's like talking to herself, sometimes in her head, sometimes out loud. But she just like, you're there, I'm here. These like silly statements that seem like childish, strange for a 32-year-old to be saying. But there she is. I have red shoes, she says. Okay, and so I think the repetition, what we're seeing with this person is, as I've said in class before, she's sort of suffering from like a arrested development, if you want. She should be more grown up than she is, but she's kind of like trapped in this weird childhood stage, having sort of been chained to her mother's bed for so long, taking care of her sick mother, and her mother was kind of like a tyrant to her, and like she didn't go out, she didn't have friends of her own, she never really grew up. She just took care of her mother like as if her mother was some evil stepmother or something like that. So she is expressing like out loud in a silly way all these individuating steps that might have been normal in a normal developing person. Like, a person grows up, turns 18, moves out, and so on. And Eleanor at age 32 is only now going through this process. So what's weird though, on top of this, she seems at the same time like she wants to like create these boundaries, like here's me, there's you. And yet, who she is and who other people are like that it remains sort of blurry in her head. Let me give you an example of this. She says at the end of chapter 3, she references this blue cup of stars. Do you remember this from before? In chapter 1, there was this little girl as Eleanor was coming from her house to Hill House. She stops off for dinner or coffee or something. I can't remember exactly what. And there's this little girl, and she's talking about her cup of stars. Okay, just this cup she has at home. And Eleanor overhears this girl talking to her parents about this cup of stars, where at the bottom she drinks her milk up, and on the bottom of the cup there's like this image of the stars. And just kind of out of nowhere, just casually, just in the silly Eleanor way, Eleanor references, "Oh yeah, I had this cup of stars when I was a kid." It's like, whose memory are you remembering? Okay, so this is an important thing for Eleanor. She has a weird sense of self. The boundaries between who she is and who you are, who her friends are, who Theodora is, are not super well defined. She picks up like memories from other people. She has a hard time sort of establishing herself. And again, this, given her backstory, this kind of makes sense. She was not allowed to develop into her own person. She was her mom's person, right? Like that's who she was. She was the person who took care of her mom. That was her only source of identity. And so now her attempt to develop her own sense of selfhood is weird. And that will continue to be weird, okay? So keep your eye on this as we watch Eleanor. So that was just a quick note about the end of chapter 3. Chapter 4, we finally, well, before we get to the haunting, yes, the haunting, it's in the title, you knew it was coming. We have this strange passage at the top of 307, the very first paragraph in chapter 4. We get this strange thing. Eleanor wakes to find the first good night's sleep she had had in years. Okay, the first goes off to this weird haunted house thing, and has the first good night's sleep she's had in years. Bizarre, right? Like what we're gonna see is the hauntings occur is that at first, like the group, not just Eleanor but the other 3 as well, are like almost excited about it. It's almost a good thing. Like it's fun at first. Okay. So they go through their day. Mrs. Dudley continues to be persnickety, and they kind of continue to make fun of her, kind of half behind her back, kind of openly. They walk around the house. They're making these brave jokes, is the phrase that they use, the brave jokes that they're making. They're kind of aware, the 4 of them are aware that they're kind of using humor to distract themselves from maybe increasing anxiety. What I love about this book so much is that the tone really isn't all like serious and heavy. Like it is kind of goofy, and it's what's unsettling about The Haunting of Hill House is how fun it is. How light, how upbeat, how they're getting, Eleanor, at least at first, is getting great night's sleep. Okay, it's like the opposite of what you expect, and that expectation creates its own creepiness. Okay, finally, towards the middle end of chapter 4, we do get the haunting. And what does this look like? First, Eleanor hears someone call her name. It's as if the house is singling her out. Okay, so this is a huge theme. Friendship, identity, isolation. Okay, good relationships, crummy relationships, isolation, self. Like, who am I? Who are you? Where do we draw the lines between these things? Eleanor has a problem with this. Anyway, the house calls Eleanor out. What happens next? She gets scared. So we have kind of 2 groups now. The women are like cowered in their room, and what do they hear? They hear a knocking. Something is going from door to door down the hall, knocking on the door. But where is it knocking? It's knocking way too up high. this is just one little detail that I think is creepy as heck. As if this too tall ghost is like hitting the door way far higher than any human should reach. I'm not sure if there's anything else to read into that other than this is weird and terrifying. So that at this point, the women are legitimately scared. Okay, we're finally getting into some real horror. So the knocking ghost comes and goes. So there's this like encroaching fiend, but as is the case with so many ghost stories, the ghost doesn't actually do anything. At least not at first. It's not the, it's not as if we have an axe murderer running through the house. It's just a ghost, and the ghosts, they can scare you, they can spook you, but they can't grab you. That's not a ghost thing to do. So the ghost comes and goes. The men have their own little haunting adventure. They chase this thing. They said it was a dog, or at least looked like a dog, and it runs out the front door. And the women are like, the front door was open. They were like, no. It just kind of ran through. Okay, so it's passing through walls. It's this thing. They can't quite see it. They chase it. Okay, that's a very heroic thing to do. Like, you run, ghost. We chase you. It's like Pac-Man with the super pellets. Your turn to run. So we have this sort of aggressive move. They chase the dog out of the house. And when all four of them get together and kind of like having this what just happened conversation, the last thing they say, and this is key, the last thing they say in chapter 4 is, doesn't it begin to seem that the intention is somehow to separate us? Dr. Montague says, separation, isolation. So keep an eye on this. Eleanor's strange, incoherent sense of self that's sort of developed. She's sort of like taking what she wants from other people. She doesn't have a good sense of who she is entirely, it seems. She wants to make friends, okay? Her first instinct, remember, was to leave. What kept her there? What kept her there is that, maybe she's a part of this crew and she wants to be. She wants to have friends for the first time. Okay, so that's the tension she's experiencing. Wants safety, but wants friends. And this separation, this isolation, especially of Eleanor. So keep these things in mind as you read on, and I'll check in with you next time. Peace.